oversight, which lets you do knife trick. The idea is that you walk kind of into them while they're falling down from the air from the Excel Heat level 2 explosion.
Yeah.
And then you perform the backdash, but the backdash considers itself to be touching them, so it stops moving backwards, and then they get hit with all the knives and die. And then there's some weird bug with the knife move where, for some reason, it does way more damage than it's supposed to. It's actually coded in a very weird way because, like, if you have too much attack in the Sanji fight, and you perform it, Sanji will get healed instead of taking damage.
Weird.
So it clearly, like, overflows the damage number somehow. My only way of calculating why this would be the case is if the multipliers are multiplying each other for, like, every knife or something, and it causes a bug. So with that in mind, the idea is, like, if you're supposed to do, like, because you have more attack than their defense by a sizable enough margin.
Yeah.
You're normally supposed to do, like, let's say 50 damage, or, like, Luffy, for example, is a great example. Or, I mean, Buggy's knives are a good example. They're 50 damage each. If you have a 2.0 multiplier, they should do 100 damage. But I tried to do the math to understand why the knife trick happens, and it never really fully made sense to me. But yeah, if you do, like, 100 times 4 knives, you would do, 400.
Yeah.
But something happens to the 5th/6th/both knives.
Yeah.
Where, because I've had the trick happen where I haven't hit with every single knife before. So I think the 5th and 6th knives are bugged. But the last 2 knives, I think, are affected by the multipliers of every previous knife multiplying each other. So it's like double damage, and then it'll be like quadra damage, and it'll be like 8 times damage. But that number is so high that the game, for some reason, decides that it's not allowed. But I don't get why it would heal Sanji is my problem. Like, I understand overflow, but health bars in that game are really high.
Yeah.
So there shouldn't be a damage number you could reasonably get to. That would cause that to happen.
It might end up as a negative number. I mean,
it could. I just don't know how it would. Like, it clearly matters what your attack is and their defense is. Because I've intentionally hacked my attack higher and made the trick impossible.
Yeah.
And hacked my attack higher on enemies with really, really high HP. Or defense, sorry. And it made the trick possible instead of impossible. So some weird way the game's calculating gets really screwed. And I don't quite understand what it is. So I don't know, but it is a weird oversight. I also tried it with moves that look really similar to it, like Usopp's Caltrops and stuff, and it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So it's just some hilariously, like, weird glitch they put in on accident on Buggy Knives. Like a freak accident.
Yeah, there might have been, like, some other issue that they're trying to fix and they broke it instead.
Yeah. The knives are buffed in that game versus the game right before that game too.
Yeah, Grand Battle Rush, I think it's the one before that one.
In GB Rush, the knives do like significantly less damage. So I think somewhere in buffing the knives, they broke them. I mean, ironically, they're only broken in story mode, which is a new mode too.
Well, yeah, because you said everything's just set to, like, a value of 5 normally.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's like technically more accurate to say that 5 is what the game considers to be the base value using the story mode's interpretation. And then the story mode actually decreases all character stats when they're below 5, and then increases them when they're above 5.
Oh, okay.
So it's just like a weird way it does the math. They like created worse versions of every character and then buffed them with stats. Which is not far off from like how Budokai works, I guess, and stuff.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with specifics in Budokai. I mean, I played a ton of like 2 casually, but
Yeah. Yeah, I just mean that the stats in those games, I think particularly like Budokai 3, where it's like you have like attack and ki as stats and stuff.
oh, okay.
In versus mode, it feels as though you are higher than having 0 in all stats. It's like something like having 5 in all stats or something. Or like 3. So it's similar in that way where they decided to like nerf 0. But
yeah.
I remember I did some math trying to understand how this bug could happen with knives, and even when I decided that it did like multiplier times 6,
Yeah.
I came up with like most fights you would only have like a multiplier of, let's say, like 1.66 times like 6 would be 9.96, but 9.96 times 50 is only 498 damage. And that's just not nearly enough. Like Crocodile, for example, not that he's a perfect example, but like, I don't know, like Usopp has a health bar of like 1,000 or something. There's no way you would hit a negative number by dealing 1,000 damage. Like Luffy does, like, can do like 800 damage in a single hit with his super. So clearly, like, there's no like weird bug where it's like you cannot do over 1,000 in a single hit or it goes negative, right?
Yeah.
That can't be a thing. Also, you're technically not doing it at a single hit. You're doing it in like 2 knives. So it's even like more weird. But I don't know. It's a bug that I'll never fully understand. I just know enough about video games that I can take a bunch of like decent guesses. But I think I sat there and had the actual damage values of the game like pouring out to me in a breakpoint on Cheat Engine.
Yeah.
And I did that and I still couldn't get the answer. I literally like looked at the enemy's health as it got fucked. And I was thinking like, okay, first it's going to do like 80, 80, 80, like 1,000, you know? And I'd get my answer. But I think what I incurred instead was I saw like 80, 80, 80, and then like they died. Or something, and I was like, what?
Just doesn't make any sense, yeah.
Yeah, it just does something. The math is important, but I don't know how it gets multiplied in such a bad way. And the only way that I could ever come up with sufficient enough math is if the multiplier that you deal goes up by like more than times 6. Like it would have to be like, oh, 1.6 times 6 times 3 to deal as much damage as it needs to.
Yeah.
To potentially cause bugs. I also just don't know if when the negative damage threshold should be triggering. Because I mean, I don't know how many bytes are in a float value, like I've seen float go really high, like 9999, so I don't know why it would have that problem. Unless somehow their float is capped way lower.
Who knows? Yeah, you'd probably have to like break the code, like actually get the game code to be able to figure it out.
Yeah, something like that. It's just so odd. But yeah, I don't know. It's so weird. really annoying because the range for floats is exponentiated, which makes it like implausibly annoying for me to know.
Yeah.
It's like it goes from negative 3.4 exponentiated plus 38 to positive 3.4 exponentiated plus 38. And I'm like, well, I don't know how big a number that sounds like a biggish number, but the fact that it's saying 3 point something is like contrary to what I know about floats usually.
Yeah, I
Like,
remember you gave me a pretty good explanation of how float values were.
yeah, so I don't know what's the biggest number they can do, and it's probably programmed by the game itself individually. Like, they probably, like, you know, reduce the accuracy and then increase the amount of numbers it can have.
Yeah.
And so I just don't know how high that goes. Unfortunately. Ba-ba.
Come on.
Okay, so in standard SQL, the syntax decimal 5.2, where 5 is precision and 2 is scale, is able to store any value with 5 digits and 2 decimals. Therefore, a value range would go from negative 999.99 to positive 999.99. So it depends on however they set the SQL precision to scale. In most video games, I think this is approximately correct. Like that they do a 2 precision.
Yeah.
Or 2 scale, I mean. So I would say it's maybe a little bigger than this, but probably not much. If that's the case, then it could be an argument that if you could do more than 1,000 damage in a single hit, that the game would actually make it negative. And it just so happens that you're throwing 2 knives. So 2 bugged knives. So if they both do like 800 damage, they're doing 1,600 total damage, and it doesn't do the problem. But when you're fighting Sanji, he has such low defense that you end up having like too big of a number.
Yeah.
Like I don't remember exactly how much I had, but I think the cap of attack is like 3.0 if you have 20 attack. And the quote unquote worst defense you can have is 0. Yeah. And 0 will make you take like 3.33 times damage.
So that's like 6 point something already, and then if the knives do multiply like it by something crazy, like the
isn't that exactly 10? It's 3.33 times 3. That's 9.99, which should be rounded.
Yeah. So yeah, 10.
So 10 times 50 is 500 damage, which is what the knives would do. That should never end up being over 1,000, but...
But I mean, like you said, the 5th and 6th knives, they might like multiply that by even more, right? So...
Yeah, my argument was that somehow like the actual bug that's happening is that the knives are multiplying the knives multiplier. So like if the calculation, like we just said, right, comes out to 10, which is as high as it can come out to,
Yeah.
uh it would multiply by another like 10 twice, let's say. So it'd actually be like by 20. And your
Yeah.
knives would do 1,000 damage, which would make it do 0. Or something to that effect. But I don't believe Sanji has 0 defense. I believe he has 1 defense.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that would be my guess, is something to that effect. Is that like maybe it multiplies. The easiest way I could come up in my head is that it multiplies the knife thing by a certain amount of times. Maybe not quite 6 times, because that might be too high of a number. It might be like 5 times, which means that if you Sanji having 1 defense would mean he has 1.66 times damage taken, which is
Yeah.
why I use that number. So it'd be like 1.66 times whatever damage you already have multiplier against him, which might be like, you might have like a, I don't know, 6 attack or something, which would be like 1.11 times damage. So if you had 1.11 or 1.22, let's say 1.22.
Yeah.
You would deal 607.56 damage per knife. And that's how much I would have in an actual run, that's why I don't have a problem knife tricking him in the run. But if in the run I get up a bit more in damage, so let's say like 2.22, I pass the damage threshold and can't deal damage anymore. Because I would do it 1,105, which is past the cap. So I think that's probably what happens, if I had to guess, is that it is multiplying by 6 or 5, one of those numbers. It's basically multiplying the multiplier of all my knives. And it causes like a hilarious oversight. I have noticed that the reason why this doesn't generally help us sometimes, like knives actually suck really bad against like Smoker and stuff, like early in the run. The Smoker has like more defense than we do attack. So he ends up like actually taking like like the damage multiplying in a lower number actually ends up screwing us, because instead of being like, we deal, 1.2 times 0.66 or something, and then it's like, okay, well that's less than 1, and then when it multiplies by 6, it's like, you deal 0.12 times the 50. It's like, that's horrible.
Yeah.
So you can notice if you fight like Smoker in the run, if you knife trick him, he actually takes no damage at all, or seemingly no damage at all.
Yeah.
So that's what initially gave me the idea that it had to be like some multiplier stacking thing.
Yeah.
Because I was losing multiplier if it was ever below 1.0. Such a like interesting type of game to speedrun on paper, because like these sections look like they're auto scrollers for the most part.
They pretty much are. Yeah.
And then
there is a way, like if you go into your whatever the mode is called, where you're like actually in mech form, then you can scroll the screen yourself by walking, but
yeah,
it's not faster.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, the real time like areas would be those ones where you saw, like where I'm walking around as like the mech blowing up those things. And then same with the boss fights.
Yeah. Fair enough.
But the part that makes it really annoying is that all the characters have like their own set of stats, like their own base stats, and they're even with the upgrades, they all end up with different finishing amounts of stats too.
Yeah.
So like I'm knocking off the easy ones first because I know the other ones are gonna be just brutal.
Makes sense to me.
The one person I spent like an hour just trying to get past stage 1 with the one character who has like almost no starting damage and no starting health.
Hype.
But it's fine. I know that like with that character, once I make it past stage 1, it's not a big deal anyway, because like the upgrades make a big difference, but really what you want to try to do with this game is you want to try and kill entire squads of enemies because you get like a boost from blowing up the whole squad rather than just some of them.
Oh. Like the auto scrolls faster?
No, so like if you know how those ships will like fly in groups of like 5 or 6?
Yeah.
You'll get 50 per ship, but then when you blow up the entire squad of them, you get like a bonus like 250 experience or whatever on top of that.
Oh, I see.
But if one of them survives, then you don't get that extra experience.
See. So, yeah, it's just about getting those stats.
Yeah.
And so killing enemies gives stats, so it makes it better.
And then, yeah, the only other problem that really there is lag. If too many enemies and bullets are on screen, it will start to slow down.
Yeah, that's normal. That's why they kill people in the gummy ship missions in Kingdom Hearts.
Oh, yeah. Trust me, I started playing this like 2 days ago, and I couldn't even get past stage 1 with the easiest character. And now I'm just flying around destroying everything.
Just how these games work. It's like how a lot of Danmakus work, where it's like it's just like a weird pattern recognition, like hand coordination thing.
Yeah, and the hitboxes aren't like perfect, so like certain parts of your ship in this mode, bullets won't touch you.
Yeah, it's pretty common in these types of games that your hurt box is actually just like a circle inside of your ship. Usually a lot of games will let you see that circle. I know like Toho does whenever you press control or shift or whatever.
Yeah, same with like all the bullet hells I played were like that too, but
yeah, some games don't have it. This game's like it like went way more with the animation of your ship, and so because it like turns and things. But if I had to guess where your hurt box is, I would say it's probably like looks to be pretty much the entire like gray portion inside your ship. Like near the center of it.
yeah. It probably changes with the form too.
Yeah.
Cause like this is what the mech looks like.
Yeah. And it's probably much taller.
It also doesn't get access to sub-weapons when you're in the mech form. Which would be like these missiles.
Yeah. Tragic.
I have so many lives that like I could literally just die every time. Like I don't need to dodge at this point. But this is the level that's notorious for lagging out.
This lags with no enemies on screen. That's so funny. They must have screwed up on the parallaxing in the background.
Oh yeah.
Because you could see the parallax like lag a little, like right there it lagged. Maybe it lags when it's summoning enemies, but it's like more obvious on this stage when it's lagging because the parallaxing gets like a little weird. But maybe because there's 3 backgrounds, right? There's a sky parallax. It doesn't look like the sky is matched up with the mountain range. And then there's the forward mountain range parallax. So there's like 3 parallaxing happening. And there's objects in the foregrounds like this green object. So that's 4 layers. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, 1, 2. No, that looks like maybe it's part of the same layer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers. Pretty dark, like deep for a GBA to have 5 layers going. Well, it's 6 layers actually, because your character and the enemies.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's possibly part of the reason. Is like there's just too many layers. Kind of interesting. I'm sure there are lag reduction strats. If I had to guess, the best way to lag reduce in this stage is gonna be like staying like close to the floor.
Destroying enemies helps.
Yeah. I'm just thinking like what is it like positionally? It almost looks like it lags just a slight amount more the higher you are. I have to actually like look at it though. Bullets definitely do seem to be really angry at it. I assume the reason bullets are so bad at lagging it is gonna be because bullets are a separate layer than player layer.
Yeah.
So it's like 7 layers when they're on.
Yeah.
The missiles are on a different layer than the bullets. We know that because missiles go past the bullets. Otherwise, they would start like clipping into each other and then flickering. Is what happens a lot of the time when objects are inside the same layer. Layers are more of a thing back on like GBA and Super Nintendo, like layer problems. There have been some modern games where layers have caused huge game-breaking bugs, though. In the game Melty Blood Type Lumina, the character Mario has supports that he summons, like puppets, kind of.
Yeah.
And it was a thing that if he performed 2, if Mario performed like 2 of his attacks at the same time, the enemy model, your model, and the 2 puppet models would intersect in such a way that your hitbox would phase through the enemy.
Weird.
Yeah, and so they patched it out by fixing the way the game did layers. They had to like completely overhaul it.
This is the part that's really bad for lagging out.
Yeah. So weird. So the city replaced the front layer. I wonder why these enemy types are so laggy.
So I think it has something to do with like, see how some of the bullets aren't circular, they're more of like a egg shape kind of thing. Those bullets, you can actually shoot them.
Oh, that's really bad then, yeah. So it's probably those bullets' fault then. Why'd they make those?
I have no idea.
That's so much more demanding on the game. That's actually like CPU demand. Because you're creating an entity object like these things, where the game has to be coded to be able to destroy them. But destroying them creates a layer. It creates an exploding layer. But it's also high processing power because now the game has to check the coordinates between your bullets and those bullets to make sure that they're hitting each other. For every bullet.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of demand. Because it's like, now it has to track like 17 objects. The idea here, obviously, is that putting bullets inside of its body does more damage because it's faster.
Yeah.
Good times.
There's also the other reason is because power-ups will scroll too. So like if you get the spread shot power-up, then all the bullets will actually hit rather than just like fly
Yeah.
across.